Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel. I'm Freddie Humphrey Wakefield, and I'm joined by Will Grant for the first time in a very long while, some Nodge spotlight. We've not done one since December, but with a lot of pressing matters at Norwich City, it felt right to bring it back out and do a video about sort of Norwich over the last week or so and the week coming up for them when they play 3 matches in the space of about 6 days. But before we dive into a lot of the hot topics regarding Norwich City, Will, been a long time since me and you were sat here doing a video. So what's been going on with you recently outside of the footballing stuff?
Yeah, mate, I've missed it, to be fair. Nothing too special, really. Just working and then allowing Norwich to ruin my weekend or weeknight. So yeah, pretty standard, to be honest, mate. But how about yourself?
Yeah, no, all been good. Everything's been all right, as you say. I've been working away, just grafting, get to the weekend, but then along come Norwich to just keep me just on the ground, really, not really raise any spirits too high. But it's just how it goes sometimes in football. But talking about Norwich, as we always do, let's sort of dive into what we want to cover. And first things, really, the reflection on Norwich's performances over the last few days. Played at home to Sunderland, drew 0-0, perhaps should have won the game, according to many punters regarding the football club, but ended up with quite a positive result and a performance that, with now really Norwich's season is done and dusted. They can't really do much with the remaining games they have. People thought it was a step in the right direction and perhaps we got a little bit more on board with the project. And then along came Friday night against Burnley at Turf Moor. Just a dire game overall, really. The first half was so subpar, and it ultimately cost Norwich, who, in fairness, went for it in the second half, were a lot better, got a goal back, but it just wasn't enough for them in the end. But your sort of overall reflection on those matches, Will, I know you were at the game against Sunderland. You weren't there on Friday against Burnley, but it just really quite a stark contrast of performances and sort of individuals' own levels, really, especially defensively from those 2 matches.
Yes, I think both the games were quite different for Norwich. I thought the game against Sunderland, I was quite impressed, especially in the first half, to be honest with you. I thought we played some really, really good stuff. And we just looked really, really controlled. And there was definitely ideas about how we could score a goal and how threatening we were. But again, mate, it's just about taking chances in the final third. And I think recently, especially the last 2 games, I think the final third has been quite a key topic for me, actually, because I think the game against Sunderland, I think we should have scored more goals or not. Well, actually, tried to score a goal. But I just generally didn't really take our chances well. Then the game against Burnley, well, if you go to Burnley, it's always going to be very, very tough. They are a great side, especially at home, and it felt like our play to get to the final third, I thought, was very, 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 very muddy. I think there was just not really anything clicking, and I think when we tried to make those passes into the strikers, they kept going astray, and it was just so inconsistent. And for me, pretty much all year, to be honest with you, that's been a topic where we get into the really, really, really good areas in attack, but we just can't seem to find that right or accurate path to become a really, really good side. And you know what? Like, that's a massive shame, actually, as well, because I think generally, when we do go away from home, I do think there's been examples this year where we've tried to really control the games and tried to really get our authority in the game, but it's just about trying to take those moments, because against Burnley, you're not going to get much chances at all, really. So I think overall the game against Sunderland, very, very encouraging, and definitely a blueprint about how we can play next year and how and just kind of how comfortable we actually looked against quite a good side. Obviously, first half in particular as well, but I just think we didn't look at really a team that was going to concede, and I think that is very, very encouraging going into the remaining games. But then again, the Burnley game, we go to a 5-back, and I think me and you were obviously talking before recording, and we were saying, and please anyone let us know, because we are stumped. But generally, I can't remember the last time Norwich won in a 5-back. So obviously you do see in game scenarios where you might go to a 5-back in the last half an hour, for example. But I can't generally give you an example where Norwich actually won a game in a five when they kind of started the game in that manner. So please do let us know if you can. But again, what I just like the first 20 minutes, I just didn't understand what was going on at all, really. Defensively, we just looked quite weak, especially. I feel really bad for McConville, actually, because he really should be doing better for that first goal, in my opinion. But he just seemed to lose a bit of concentration about where his surroundings were. Maybe it was nerves, but who knows, really. But then again, the second goal is a classic goal of Norwich all season, where an experienced player again is giving the ball away in such a stupid area, and then it's 2-0, and then the game was already up. Really, I think I saw a tweet obviously after the game against Burnley. I can't remember the username, so I do really apologise. But he's basically listed like scenarios recently of Norwich going 2-0 behind in open 30 minutes in a game. And that gives you so much to do. And we were speaking last week, mate, as well, weren't we? About how hard it is for Norwich to try and score a goal. It feels like it's very, very difficult for them to do so at times as well. So, yeah, I just generally, so we played a 5-back against Burnley, and obviously wanted to go maybe a bit more direct. But even at times when we were trying to play out from the back, just stupid decision makings there as well. I didn't think we got the balance right of when to go long and when to play out from the back. And although the game did finish 2-1, that first half for me was really, really poor. And it felt like a League One side was trying to defend with all their life against a Premier League team in like an FA Cup kind of game. It felt that superior for Burnley. So very, very saddening about that game. Obviously, the second half was a bit different. But then again, I didn't really like learn anything from the game, really, because I've seen many times this season where Norwich have gone 2-0 down, and then they come out of the second half and try to dictate the play and try to regain some control. I didn't think Norwich, although we were tidy in the second half, I don't think we were very, very progressive with our passing at all. So that was definitely a concern as well. So I do think maybe the scoreline maybe did flatter us as well a little bit. I know Burnley are a good side as well, but I just really don't think our performance warranted a narrow defeat, because I think, do you know what, it could have been maybe a 3-0 or a 4-0 loss. I thought we were that bad in the first half. So obviously, I think we'll probably be taking a 2-1 in the end because it could have been so much worse. But hopefully, we don't hear or see any of that in the last few games of the season.
No, I completely agree with everything you have said there. I can't add too much more to it. You know, what I said in the podcast last week, I wanted to see Norwich genuinely try in the remainder of their matches. And that first half, I didn't see that. I didn't get what I think a lot of fans want out of this team. Second half got it because they had to try. They were 2-0 down and they were chasing the game, and they brought on attacking players. If they didn't try, there would have been no hiding for anyone. But you know, even Thorup coming out in his post-match press conference and saying that the game plan was, he knew that Sargent and Nunez weren't going to play the first 45 minutes. So the game plan was exactly what Norwich did. Sit back, absorb pressure, do what they can, get to half-time, see where they are, then they'll go for it. Which I said to you just before we went live for this, just seems like a bit of a waste. What have Norwich got to lose? They're not going to be in the playoff positions. They are not going to be threatened by relegation. What is the point in just throwing away a 45-minute period? You might as well do what you have wanted to do all season and play in the manner of which you want the players to learn and get them used to it. There's really no excuse to not play the way that you want your team to, because as I just said, what is there to lose? Genuinely, what is there for Norwich to lose at this stage in the season, where it's wrapped up for them with another 4 matches to play? And they're tough matches in all respects. Their game against Portsmouth coming at Carrow Road on Good Friday. Portsmouth are pretty much safe, but are a good side and can cause a lot of teams issues. You know, they beat Leeds this season. They had a good performance against Norwich at Fratton Park. They then have to go to Millwall away, who are fighting for the playoffs and are a really, really good side at home at the Den. You know, that goes without saying, with Millwall's history of tough atmosphere in home matches. They then travel to Middlesbrough, again, a side who are one of the best teams in this division and are a playoff fighting side. They then host Cardiff on the final day, who are fighting for their lives at the bottom of the table. So it's all matches where there's teams perhaps afraid to lose against a team that has nothing to lose. But Norwich don't seem to adapt that same mentality of they have nothing to lose. They still seem quite frightened in matches and their approaches to them. But going on to away performances, you've already touched on the Burnley one there, and I did a watch along with Jack. So if anyone wants to know my thoughts, just go and sort of skim through that watch along and see what me and Jack were saying. But for the remaining away games, have to go to Middlesbrough, and Millwall, who both, as just said, fighting to get playoffs and have the chance of Premier League football next season. But what do Norwich do? How do they approach them? What do you think is the best way? Do they continue this 5 at the back system, which they've barely used this season, or do they go back to a 4 at the back shape and just play the way that Thorup wants them to just maybe gain a bit more familiarity of it for a few players who perhaps haven't had the playing time this season?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't go to a 5 back. I just don't think we are very good at it, to be honest. And just I think when Norwich are trying to defend and that being the best way for them to get a result, but I think that means normally it is going to be quite a desperate 90 minutes performance. But for me, I think you've got to go back to a back 4. I think that is where we have played our best football this season. Albeit, I think teams have probably found us a bit too easy to play against, and I probably would raise a point right now as well. I think if you were to pick, if any of the relegation kind of threatened clubs were to pick a team to play in these remaining 4 games, I think they'd probably play Norwich, just because how easy it is to try and score a goal against us. So obviously we do have a lot of qualities of our own. It's just about trying to showcase that more frequently, really. I think definitely playing in a 4 back is probably the best way for us to get a result. I think we definitely do like to show some quality on the ball and build up play, and we can be very, very effective at getting out of quite difficult situations at times. I think Jacob Wright has really, really showcased that in his last 3 games. Been very, very impressed with him, and I think he's definitely the kind of core player to try and build around for Norwich next season in terms of our possession stuff. But yeah, if you were to look at the away games coming up, that game against Millwall is going to be a very, very interesting one, really, because having watched Millwall under Alex Neil, they're quite a direct side at home. They'll be putting balls in behind. It just feels like at their place, the best probably way to play against them is just showcase some courage on the ball and just try to maybe play through them at times, because it feels like, although Norwich probably that is their game to an extent, I just think against Millwall, if they go into the game and try and play a game similar to what they do, then I think it could be quite a long afternoon for us as well. But it's going to be very, very interesting to me, that Millwall game, because it feels like that game is one which I think we actually need going into next year, really, because it still feels like we're trying to learn against these opponents who are quite gritty. And I just think the more games we play against those type of sides will definitely help us in the long term. Obviously, we do have quite a good record against Millwall, but that's probably more at Carrow Road, really. So obviously, hopefully that can carry on into the game coming up as well. But I just think overall as well, mate, these away performances, I think I've said it pretty much all season. I think the biggest thing which I've always said is that we just seem to lack courage, especially away from home. The mindset always feels like in these games that they want to try and control these games and try to establish some momentum. But at times, I think they do play a bit too safe, and they don't really balance those moments where they probably can be a bit more proactive and more attacking as well. I think the record is only 2 away wins in 16, which is quite something, really, considering what we have seen this season. So yeah, that's definitely an issue, and stuff like that, mate. It just builds up for JHT, really, because I personally think these 4 games are very, very important for us as well, because he's still got time to try and win some fans over. I think right now maybe it feels like the main consensus is that and people are in support of him, but there's definitely some big question marks, and I definitely do probably concur with that kind of thought process as well. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting last two away games, because you've got Borough and Mill, who kind of play in two very, very different ways, and they've got to try and get a result in both of me, because it feels like we need to learn more about this side. We can't just, I don't want to be sitting here in May, for example, and be discussing us and away this season, and be discussing those last two games, and would get absolutely trounced. I just don't want that. We need to see more from this side away from home, because simply it feels like the pattern is in these away games, Norwich go down by 2 goals in open half an hour, show some decent fight and determination to come back after half time, but just don't have the quality to try and get a result. And although that might change, it probably will, hopefully, because football is so cyclical, right? But it just puts so much pressure on him, because next year the expectations are going to be much higher. But the problem is as well, I think we're all noticing we probably need about another 5-6 new players as well. So then it's going to take time for those players to really try and get to grips with the playing style quickly, really. And that is just quite a dangerous prospect when you've got to try and get results quickly to try and retain buy-in. But the players are still so new as well. So it's going to have to change quickly for us on the road, because it feels like supporters are just getting more and more restless.
No, they are. I think, and you could argue after the first half performance at Burnley, criticism is very much fair, because it was a really odd setup from Thorup and the rest of his coaching staff to go with that and sort of persist with it, even at a goal down and 2 goals down just throughout the first half. And it was just so weird. It seems as if that they were hoping for the best and that they weren't to concede many goals. It did feel like, as you said a few moments ago, like an underdog playing at a higher up team in an FA Cup match, because that's what Norwich were hoping for. You know, their only chance of the first half comes from a long ball over the top from a counter attack, which Sainz should score, but he didn't. But no, that's all they had. They were feeding on absolute scraps, were Norwich, in that first half. But no, I think it is a shame that there's now sort of a lot less of a lack of buy-in, because that performance against Sunderland, that was a reminder that there is still so much potential there, and that Thorup can be a good coach. And if he studies against the top sides, we know how we can play against them and use their weaknesses, because against Sunderland, we were by far the better team for majority of the match. But no, it's just very frustrating, because then you look at sort of the current state of this project, and will it click, and do Norwich need a really big start next season, which they most likely do. And it's important that it comes around, because if it doesn't work quickly next season, there's only going to be more people who lose buy-in in this project and have their patience run thin, because football is a game of that. You know, people can turn on individuals at their own club quickly, or it may take a bit more time for people to sort of change their overriding opinions of people. But where Norwich are currently, I guess people may have expected it with the project they're at, and they would have thought mid-table was where they were. But I think the big thing really as of late has been, there just seems like there's not been much progression of this project as of late in performances and results. You know, we looked at it quickly of where Norwich were at the halfway stage of the season. They were 12th in the league and 8 points off playoffs. Where are they now with 4 games to go? They're 13th in the league. They're 9 points off playoffs. So it hasn't changed. In the half a season, Norwich genuinely have gone nowhere. That they have still nearly got the same amount of wins as draws and defeats. But what do you make of it, really, in terms of where this project is? And next season, they need a really big start, because if they don't, I think even the higher ups at the club could their patience be up, and they decide, right, that's it. This hasn't worked. We need to change things.
Yeah, my head is constantly spiraling about next season for me and his current project, because, as I said earlier, I think we've all seen those experienced players let us down this season, and obviously those young players as well are also going to make errors as well. But I just generally think, just looking at the whole situation, really, it just does feel like we need about maybe 60 players in the building, and that ultimately just does mean as well what you're going to get from that is more periods of transition, really. And it just doesn't feel like that's going to be there next season. And obviously, it's really important to have standards, and I know that is definitely the case as well. But I just think it's just common sense, really. When you have so much players that are going to come to the club again next year, there's going to have to be some time for those guys to kind of settle in, really, because there isn't really, I would say, to be honest with you, mate, going into next year, there isn't really much players there who are kind of like the core of the side that are going to stay. I think I could probably only think of Callum Fisher because either the others that are going to go are probably going to go because obviously they are much better than what Norwich are at the minute, or secondly they're not even good enough. They're not kind of good enough to play for Norwich anymore. So there's already quite a big discrepancy really about where players are at for Norwich. It just feels like we need more kind of players there who are more consistent and you can kind of add value to this project. I just can't really see too much flag bearers, if you will. And I think it's really important when there's always going to be so much change. You need those players there that you can rely on. And I just don't think we actually have that at the minute. It feels like to me, especially now with the player of the season vote out as well, many people have voted for Callum Fisher due to his consistency. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. But the thing is for Norwich, there hasn't been anyone else really who has kind of gave that consistency because they've either been injured or they just kind of really haven't showcased that along that period really. So I just go into next year and I just right now for me there's just I want it to work so badly, but there's just so much questions that I actually have about our recruitment and how we're going to move forward as a club. I think a great example actually is last season when I think Bristol City and Swansea came to Carrow Road, and I think we drew both games. But more so, Bristol City actually, they came to Carrow Road and played in such a very, very good, coherent style, and it feels like that is what I would probably want Norwich to be at right now. Really, there shouldn't be really a case where I'm probably debating to myself right now, but it feels like our performances more so at the start of the season were probably much better than what they are now. And already that is quite a negative kind of thought process. But in reality, mate, it's true, that there shouldn't be right now what there is. There shouldn't be such a lack of progression in terms of play styles. It just feels like, personally to me, it's at times right now, we've got so much ideas about how we want to play. So, for example, we go to Burnley to try and park the bus, and the next week we come out and we want to try and dominate possession. I just want to see our game order become much, much more stronger and much, much more reliable because it just feels like at times we're just getting so much inconsistency. I know I get that because we've got so many young players as well, but it just feels like that needs to happen because otherwise we're going to lose some real great fans who kind of don't really have the buy-in for it anymore and they kind of don't see it working. But yeah, I could just imagine a scenario, for example, where in the first 10 games of next year, we start the season quite slowly just due to all those players settling in. Personally, I don't know. I think 10 games next year is probably too soon to make a judgment for me. I think it's probably more so maybe until half the season, and we'll see where we're at because it just feels like our transfer policy again is probably going to be to buy much more young talent, and obviously that has its advantages. But I just do think at times there's got to be a greater need for Norwich to try and be a bit more adjustable, really, and kind of like their markets, for example, trying to buy players at peak ages and just trying to really create a real strong core side that can really challenge for this league. It's a very tough league, and it just feels like right now Norwich don't really have the squad profile to really kind of mount a challenge, really, and that's quite sad. I just think it's going to take more than 3 years for us to really try and become a top 2 team. I just don't really feel like it feels like when I heard the 3-year project and you kind of keep thinking back to that now, I generally just don't think I just generally just can't see a situation where it all clicks within that kind of tunnel because there isn't right now enough players who are showcasing real good performances. And you just look at the parachute payments of all these clubs that come down, and it's just going to get so much harder for us, mate. I just don't have the encouragement or the I just don't really have the trust that it's all going to work together, mate. I just feel right now I have so much issues and concerns about how we can really become a really good side at this level.
Yeah, I share those concerns. I think the big thing for me, I completely agree with you. I'm sure a lot of people will on your point regarding consistency. There hasn't really been a consistent performer, really, apart from Kellen Fisher, because of a lot of injuries, perhaps, or just not knowing how to play the system that their manager wants them to, and sort of approaching. It seems Norwich approach every game with a different mentality completely. Well, football teams do ultimately, because not one team is going to play the same as another team, despite the fact everyone seems to want to play intricate passing and three at the back shapes in possession and quick, rapid passes. But, it does seem like Norwich do sometimes get a bit confused with how they want to play matches and how they go in approaches of them. So, yeah, there hasn't really been anyone consistent. You could argue Sargent, due to the fact that not any player in England's top four divisions have scored more goals than him since the start of 2025. But that's ultimately because he's a fantastic player at this level. He is a proven goal scorer, and he just seems to get a big injury every year. So really, you could only argue Sargent, who has had such fewer games to base his levels of consistency off, over Kellen Fisher, because Fisher has had a full season. He's showcased his talent and his desire whenever he plays for his side in every match. But again, I just want to quickly touch on your other point of signing players in their prime. I completely agree with it. For me, this team lacks experience and lacks leadership. You look at the senior players. You said it within the first 5 minutes of the video. You look at how many mistakes have been made by senior players, especially as of late. That Burnley game, Kenny McLean on a quick free kick to Marcondes, who has got no idea that pass is going to him. I'm stumbling on my words. That's how furious I am. He's got no clue that McLean wants to give him the ball. McLean quickly looks up and plays the pass, and then he just throws his arms up in the air and he just watches. Jayden Ante gets the ball. McLean, his body language off the ball is so bad. He just watches Anthony and he just runs and he runs and he runs, and the shot takes the most wicked deflection. But even over the course of the season, Duffy has been mistake prone at times, and even Marcondes at times, him instantly, that example of he has no idea his teammate is passing him the ball. And, he's not been overly consistent. And Norwich fans, in all fairness, it's completely fair, because he's been a good performer at times, are saying that he's one of Norwich's best performers this season and that he was a focal point of the team at one stage. But even he has been prone to making mistakes. And, you could, as young players, of course, it's easy to give it to a young player because they don't have knowledge and experience within the first team game. But Norwich do need players who are right at the peak of their careers and know what's required at a good standard of football. And they don't have players like that currently. It does seem like the recruitment strategy does need a bit of a shake up, because we knew that Thorup likes to integrate young players, and that's what his whole philosophy at Norgeland was all about. But as a lot of people have said, the English league is a completely different kettle of fish. It is so different to other leagues and their philosophies of using young players and giving them a chance, because the standard is higher. The opposition play loads of different ways. There's teams in this division who will just kick lumps out of you and will boot the ball in the air, make it difficult for you, because that is what English football has been. That's the heritage of the Championship and the English Footballing League. But no, they need that, Norwich. They need players who you can go to places like Middlesbrough or Millwall and they will get you through it, because they know what it's like. They will play it like places at that, and they will experience dog's abuse, but they'll get you through it because they know how to play like that. They can adapt to atmosphere. They can be the one who can just put a shoulder around his players. Just at a break in the game, just call them over, get them in a huddle and whatever, and just say, look, you need to do this. Let's communicate. I'll go here, and you can play passes to me. I'll show for the ball. You just do this to their winger. Just kick one out of him to get it riled up on their side, get them frustrated. So Norwich need that, because I think their leadership is so poor. You look at McLean, who over the course of the season, it's a shame, because he's been such a loyal servant, and he's a really good player, but he's showing signs of a lack of discipline. And Shane Duffy, he's got such a lack of discipline. You just look back at his fiasco of the end of last season when Norwich were in the playoff places. They just seem like they're not getting things drilled into them. And, we don't know what goes on in the training ground, but sort of to end a bit of a run as such, no, Norwich need players who are a bit more senior and you can get the best out of for a couple of years, not someone who it will take time to make them good, or someone who has been really good but is curtailing a little bit because they're getting older. No, they need sort of players around the age of 25 to 28 to get them somewhere, just for a bit of seniority. And as I said, people who will get you through hard games. But let's talk about some games coming up, and they are hard ones. Portsmouth at home on Good Friday. Then there's barely any rest. Millwall away on Good Monday, which, as anyone will ever tell you who's watched football from 1980 or onwards, it's got one of the hardest places to go in all of English football because of the atmosphere. But two games where Norwich could get some points out of it. Perhaps getting a draw in both games would actually be quite good. But what do you make of them? Because with how Norwich have played as of late, 2 wins in 13 matches, you can't help but be pessimistic.
Yeah, and also, as you said earlier, mate, as well, each the sides that we had to play coming up, they've all got to play for something. They've all got to play for something as well, right? So that's going to be like an extra layer of something which Norwich are going to have to be aware about as well. I think generally across this season, I've been very impressed with Norwich at home against the sides in this division who have been struggling really. So, for example, the likes of the game against Stoke, for example, Plymouth, as well as that really as well. We have showcased the quality to really beat those sides really, really comfortably. And I'm just hoping that can be showcased against Portsmouth as well, because it feels like, mate, there just hasn't been enough performances right now where I've been really, really impressed. I think there was definitely more probably at the start of the season to where I am now, really with it all. So I think the Portsmouth game is a great opportunity for Norwich to really showcase their qualities. Look, I think Portsmouth are a very, very inconsistent side. I think obviously they're a much better side at home, but also away from home as well. They can cause you problems as well. Look at Josh Murphy; he's having an absolutely fantastic campaign as well. Obviously, he's going to be a threat, and he's definitely going to be up for the game as well, which you can imagine as well. So, I think Portsmouth have showcased some moments this year where they have looked a really, really good side, and we definitely got to be very, very wary of them as well. But then we've got that Millwall game as well, which is just horrendous, really. You kind of have Portsmouth, a decent home game for Norwich, but then 2 days after you have to go to Millwall, and it just feels like that game for me. I just think, one, I want to see us really, really try in that game and try to impose our game style and really showcase that we are up for the fight. My worry for that is I don't know if we will. I just think it feels like team, and especially in the first half, and just go really, really hard at them and just try to cause so much issues for them. And it feels like when Norwich just constantly have balls over the top or balls firing towards them, it's just really hard for them to try and almost retain that pressure. It feels like we almost like allow it to get the better of us as well. So definitely some games coming up where I feel like one against Portsmouth we can really try and just showcase our quality at beating really, really good sides again. I think Carolina Road needs a really good performance as well. I feel like if we lose or draw that game, and I definitely think there'll probably be more haters towards this project, which is obviously not ideal as such. But yeah, I just think that Millwall game, if we do go to Millwall and get a really, really good result and back up as well with a really, really good performance. And I think it might get more people actually really believing in what we can do as the kind of season goes on, and also is next year as well, really. So I think there are games there which do worry you as a supporter, but games there as well where you look at them and you think, well, if Norwich could go away to Mill and then go away to Middlesbrough and get 2 wins and then get some really good performance as well, that's definitely going to help JHT for the kind of to try and retain that buy-in as well. I think that's very, very important right now. I said in the last podcast we had about what I want to see for the next 6 games coming up, and it's literally that I want to learn new things out about this side. I want us to go to the likes of Millwall and Middlesbrough and really just impose our game style on them and just come back with some really good performances to get me really believing that and we can compete in this division. Because right now, for me, what I'm thinking is with this project, we've got really, really good individual quality that can really batter those lower end teams in this league. But especially when we go away from home, it feels like anyone can beat us, really. And they really, to be honest with you, mate, but it even really has to do much to beat it as well, which is the most concerning thing as well. And it feels like, especially going into next year as well, teams will know more about JHT style of play as well. So he's also got to try and really, really think about that as well, really, about how he can really try and evolve this side and just try to find more formulas about how he can be a really, really good side on the road as well. I was pleased as well. We did score a set piece goal against Burnley, albeit it was very, very poor defending as well. But again, that narrative as well has got to change. We have to be much, much more reliable as well as scoring set piece goals as well, because it's a very, very big area of the game. And simply, we have been awful both ends this year with set pieces as well. So hopefully, we can just have 2 really good performances and just learn new things about this side.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that a lot of people want is to learn things about this team. And well, there's no excuse to not put on a show, really, in the remaining 4 games. As we've already said, there is nothing to lose. Truly nothing to lose. What? You lose your games, so be it. There's nothing to compete for the rest of this season. But no, what do you all think? What do you want to learn about this Norwich team? Let us know in the comments section down below. Do you agree with what we've said, or do you disagree with what we've said? Let us know your thoughts, and we'll be more than happy to reply to them in the comments section below. Anyway, this has been Nodge Spotlight, our sort of weekly review show, albeit it's been a long time since we last did one. I've been Freddie Humphrey Wakefield. He's been Will Grant. This has been the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel, and we'll see you all again very soon.